Hi guys, it's Judy from Patterns for Pirates, and tonight I'm going to show you a lot. I don't have every apparel woven in my stash, but I'm going to show you quite a few, the ones that I have in my stash currently. And then if you have questions about ones that I don't have, I can try to answer, but I just won't have an example. Let's start off with the infamous cotton woven quilting cotton. Now this is not an apparel fabric. This is not going to be in the apparel section of a craft store like Joann's or Mood Fabrics or anything like that. And the reason why is because it doesn't have a soft feel or drape, and it wrinkles really badly. Another reason why it won't be in the apparel section is because it's only 45 inches wide. Most apparel fabric is sewn in at least 56, 58 inches wide, and that's so you can get a piece of apparel for an adult out of one width. At least, you know, the front and back of a shirt. One thing that I see all the time about quilting cottons is that they're so much cheaper, but you're only getting 45 inches of fabric instead of 56 to 58 inches. And that can really mean doubling your yardage, because even as a size medium, I can't get even just a tank top, the front and back of a shirt, out of one width of 45 inch wide fabric. So I would have to buy double the yardage of that than I would an apparel woven or knit, which is 58 to 60 inches wide. So that's one thing to consider when you think, oh, they're so much less expensive. So let's pull up that cotton and see if I can find it now. You know what, I think my little one might have snatched it, so I'm going to go grab one, and I will be very quick. Okay, so here's my quilting cotton. It's Batman. Pulled it out of my little boy's stash. And once again, the biggest difference between apparel fabric and quilting fabric is that it's only 45 inches wide. Okay. Another reason why I just don't recommend it for apparel is that it just doesn't have very good drape. And I'm going to use my mannequin back here to show drape of different fabrics. So hopefully it's a little easier to understand that term, saying it. So when we talk about drape, hi guys. When we talk about drape, one thing you'll notice is how many folds it has on the front. So this cotton, quilting cotton, has 1, 2 maybe. Maybe you can count 2. Another thing you'll notice is that it sticks out, tints out from my mannequin. If I turn her to the side, you'll see my mannequin ends right here, and my cotton woven ends way out here. So it tints out about 5 inches, I'd say, about 5 inches on the front and the back. And that's something in general that most women don't want to add to their body. It's 5 or 6 inches on the front and the back of their silhouette. So we'll move on to some more woven fabrics that I do recommend. I'm going to start with the more stable wovens. So things that you would use for bottom weights, pants, and more structured garments. Here's a denim. This is something that most of us are very knowledgeable about already, just because we see it in ready wear all the time and we hear denim all the time. So denim is a type of twill, nice, sturdy, thick. Some of it has stretch, some of it doesn't. So I'm not going to go too much into denim since most people know denim pretty well. Let's see. Okay. Here's Twill, and the only one that I could find in my stash. I am wearing a pumpkin spice, yes. And I'm working on a cheat sheet, but I can't promise how soon it will be out for woven fabrics. So here is a Twill. The only one that I can find in my stash is already cut into some pants or some shorts for my little guy. And a Twill has a little bit of texture to it. And it's very much like a denim. It's sturdier, thicker. Of course, it comes in different weights like all fabric. And it has a texture very similar to denim. So it would be good for all the same things as a denim would be. Mostly pants or a very structured jacket, something like that. It's Twill. Another one that goes next that I didn't have in my stash is a poplin. A lot of times poplin will be a stretch poplin, and it's like a stretch denim, just has a teeny tiny bit of stretch. Some Twill has stretch too, just like denim and poplin. They're all very similar. They're all a thicker, sturdier bottom weight that you would use for pants, more structured garments like maybe a jean jacket, something like that. Poplin has a little bit of a different texture though than the Twill and the denim per se, but behaves a lot the same as a Twill or a denim. Okay, I have here some Madras. This is Madras. I don't promise to pronounce everything correctly because most of the time I pronounce it with a very thick Texas accent. So I'll try to spell out words that I think I might butcher with my Texas accent. Madras, Madras. And looks like this. Again, it's usually cotton. It's almost like a patchwork if you can see the back side. This is popular for little boys' pants. Another one I have is a Chambray. So I have one here that has a little design on it. Both are cotton chambray. Most chambrays are just 100% cotton. They're more stable, more like a cotton. They'll wrinkle like a cotton. Much more lightweight than the ones that we've been talking about. Usually even a slightly lighter than like a quilting cotton, but still stiffer, still will wrinkle pretty badly. I'm going to drape this one so you can see. This is one I see all the time that people would like to use for a top, and you know, you can use it for a top. It has a little tiny bit more drape than that quilting cotton, but not much. So I wouldn't recommend Chambray for a very loose fit woven garment, because as you can see, it still tints out. Here is where she ends, and there's where the chambray ends, so it tints out a good 4 inches still. So I would recommend this, something like the Timeless that cinches at the waist, So you still get that definition of your figure. Or a button-up shirt. It's still sturdy enough to wear for pants too. Chambray can be pretty forgiving because it is a little bit more stable, but you can buy it pretty lightweight. My next one I have is a linen. So I got this from Joann's. Linen you can mostly tell because it has a rougher weave texture. So pretty easy to pick out usually. Twill can have stretch. It is like denim and poplin. So some of it has stretch and some of it doesn't. If it does have stretch, it's usually very little, like you think of a stretch denim. So here's linen, and as you can see, we're starting to get into a more drapey fabric. It still adds to her. Here's the end. Probably sticks out 3 inches, so we're getting less and less of what it's sticking out from her body. Linen is great for looser pants. This one is a thicker linen, so this would be great for pants. I bought this for the upcoming pants. Still probably not quite drapey enough for a loose top, but if it's semi-fitted or cinches at the waist in some way, you could use a linen. Linen does tend to wrinkle unless it's a blend. If it's a blend and it has some rayon poly in it, it won't quite wrinkle as bad. I grabbed this chambray because this chambray has some rayon in it. So it's going to tend to be a lot drapier. If you see rayon in the blend, instantly it's going to have more drape and it's going to be softer to the touch. One reason I prefer knits is because I really like to be comfortable. But if it's got rayon in it, if it's a softer, drapier fabric, it's much more comfortable. So I'm going to drape this chambray with rayon, and you can see it's much drapier. Again, when we're talking about drape, we're looking at these folds in the front. So if you remember that cotton woven that we did first had 1, maybe 2 fold lines. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So much drapier. If I turn her to the side, here's where she ends and here's where my fabric ends. So the more folds it has, the littler each fold is, the less it's going to add to your body tinting out. So we're essentially looking at the same thing. How many folds, how far away is it going to stick out from your body? So this one's pretty good. This one you could use for something that is semi-fitted, or it's a little thicker since it's a chambray, so I wouldn't necessarily use it as something very loose, but since it has rayon in it, you could go a little bit looser. Yes, so when we talk about drape, we're talking about how it drapes down. So when you're wearing it, it's going to drape down towards your body. One way to look at it when you're looking at it on a mannequin, or if you just hold it up in the store, is how many fold lines it has. The more fold lines it has, the drapier the fabric is. A lot of people say a soft hand. Some people are talking about a softer drape, and some people are just talking about the touch of the fabric. So this linen has a rougher texture, but it still has some drape. So usually when people talk about a soft hand, they're talking about both drape and texture. Next, I'm going to do a classic shirting. This is what you think of as a classic button-up shirt. Shirting usually has a little bit of stretch, just a little bit, but it's really nice for a classic shirt because usually they're at least semi-fitted, if not fitted. And so that little tiny bit of stretch gives it a lot of comfort, just a little wiggle room on the fitting. Okay, so as you can see, compared to my other ones that we've been doing, and let it focus. This has 3 drape folds, so not very drapey, but that makes sense, right? Because a classic fitted shirt doesn't need drape. It's tighter to the body. So classic shirting doesn't work great for very loose, works better for at least semi-fitted to fitted. Okay, one that I grabbed that I won't touch very much on is flannel. It's 100% cotton usually, brushed on one side, good for warmer weather. Not good drape. Usually you'll see pajama pants, something fitted like a button-up shirt works well. Let's see. Okay. So, now I'll be moving on to what you can pair with a looser top. And the reason most of us are looking for fabric with good drape for wovens, for beginners, is because a looser top is so much easier to fit to a curvy woman's body when you're a beginner. When you're a beginner, a fitted woven garment can be very challenging to fit to curves that we all have. So starting with a looser top is much easier. Sometimes it's harder to find the fabric. So here's my favorite fabrics for a looser top and a woven. You know what, I'm going to start out with my very favorite. My very favorite I tend to buy is a Rayon. And I'm probably going to butcher the name with my Texas accent. So, Rayon Chalet, I think. S-H-A-L-L-I-S. Yes. If something has more drape, it's softer, flowy. Something has less drape, it's more structured, stiff. Hope that helps. So here's a rayon. I got it from Joann's. It was in their famous designer collections. This is 100% rayon, which means it's super soft. It's soft to the touch. It has a soft drape. You can already tell, even just when I hold it up, it gets thin, right? It doesn't tint out real big, but I'm going to drape it for you. I really like rayon because it has a lot of drape. It's very soft to the touch, but I don't find it very difficult to work with, at least not compared to some of the very slinky drapey wovens. So I find this easier to work with than, say, a chiffon. And as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so drapey. Right? You can see this as a beautiful long dress, and it's got those beautiful fold lines. It's going to fall to your body under your bust, which my mannequin doesn't have a very big bust, but you can see here's where she ends, and here's where the fabric ends. So it's only adding 1.5 inches maybe. And of course, if you're wearing a looser garment, you're going to expect it to be a little bit looser than your body. But even if this garment was, say, 10 inches of ease, it would fall to the body, and it would only add that 1.5 inches about. And the rest would become these beautiful drapey folds. Again, this is rayon. It's probably my very favorite. Even if I'm tempted to pick up a store-bought shirt, I have one that I really love, I'll have to admit, from Target. It's a button-up shirt, and it's made out of rayon, and it's so soft. You can use a woven for the bottom of the boundless. You just have to gather it with elastic so that that woven will still stretch to go on your body. So if you gather it with the elastic method in the tutorial, you're good for a woven. A lot of ladies would add a little bit of width for a woven just so you have some more ease through the booty to sit, stand, move around. Okay. Another one of my favorites is a Crinkle Chiffon. So, I'm going to show you the texture. Crinkle. You can see that. And one of the reasons I really like this one is because it has some stretch. So you can see, you can pretty much stretch the crinkle out is what you're doing. Another reason I really like this one is because it hides wrinkles really well. So you ride in the car, you get out, and it looks just fine. You don't look like you didn't iron your shirt. I know someone's probably going to ask where I got this, but I don't remember. Okay, so I'm going to drape it, and as you can see, very drapey. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Super drapey. I mean, this could be a super loose swing maxi dress and still look gorgeous. It's going to drape down to your body. Here's where she ends. It's adding that much, right? I mean, nothing to your body. You're not going to look any bigger than what you are in this. Again, I really like the crinkle. Gives it a little bit of stretch for comfort and for fitting. It's a little bit easier. Let's see. Here's another one. This one is kind of similar. It is a crepe woven, so it has a texture too. Sometimes I see sites refer to the texture as pebbly, but just looks like crepe to me. Because that's what I know. And again, this one stretches just a teeny tiny bit, not quite as much as the crinkle, but this one is just a little bit because you can stretch that little texture out just a little bit. So I'll drape this one. This one's a crepe. Most of these can be made from different fibers as well, if you're wondering. So I'm not sure I could give you 100%, but a lot of crepes and chiffons, all these ones at the end I'm going to show you have a lot of poly in them. And even though with knit you think, oh, poly, it's hot, with a woven they're really lightweight and breathable. Even the poly ones tend to be fine even in heat. The poly makes it wrinkle-less, and it also makes it a little easier to work with usually. So poly is not always super bad in a woven. Super drapey, gorgeous. Okay, this one's very similar to a crepe. This one's called a Georgette. I do remember where I got this one. I got this one from Sincerely Riley. So it has a texture. It's just ever so slightly different than a crepe texture. Georgette, I would say, has no stretch though. Even though it has that little texture, maybe a tiny bit. One thing about Georgette and crepe is they're not very soft to the touch. So since they have that texture on them, they're not silky smooth. So they're a little bit rougher. It does make it a lot easier to work with. It's not going to slip and slide because it has that texture. It'll hold on to itself. Georgette is still beautifully drapey though. Okay, again, lots of drape. It's not going to be adding anything to your body. I do find Georgette a tiny bit less comfortable. Not enough that I don't buy it if I find a gorgeous print. But if I had that same option in a rayon, I'd probably pick the rayon. Okay. Let's move on to a poly. So, one way you can tell 100% poly is the sound. Now that sounds funny, but for me, when I pick up a poly, I can just hear it, right? So when you're walking, you're going to be able to hear it. But it's very, very soft. It doesn't wrinkle. I literally had these like crumbled up on the floor. and it just does not wrinkle. It's very soft, very drapey. I got this downtown in the fabric warehouses here in the DFW area. Okay, so again, very, very drapey, very soft. It does have a synthetic feel and touch. It's almost got a little bit of a sheen to it. This is 100% poly. Okay, I will do some chiffons. I have some chiffons that I will show. I have a few more before that. This is another poly I'm going to show you. I got this poly from Hobby Lobby, actually. They started carrying a few more lines of solid apparel fabric, and this is one that they have in a few different colors. It's 100% poly, and it's a little bit thicker. I see it's white, and it's almost opaque, which is really hard to find in any fabric, knit, woven, anything. But again, I'll show you, it's 100% poly. It still has that same sound. But won't wrinkle. This one's a little bit thicker, which I really liked since it was white, is why I grabbed it. It's hard to find a nice, thicker, drapier white. So as you can see, lots of drape. It's super soft to the touch. 100% poly. And you can do different weights of fabric. Wovens, unlike knits, which are usually sold by like grams and stuff when they're listed, most of the time people will just say lightweight, medium weight. This is 100% rayon. This is a looser weave. I got this from Hobby Lobby. It's almost a gauze. They don't have it labeled as a gauze, but it's a very loose weave. So this is 100% rayon. This is probably the softest woven I've ever touched. This makes me excited to wear woven. Now this one from Hobby Lobby is only 45 inches. I did not notice that when I bought that because most apparel fabric isn't. As you can see, it's much more narrow than all my other ones. Super drapey. Hopefully I have enough to do something with because I did not realize it was 45 inches. Okay. Again, Hobby Lobby, this is 100% rayon and a looser weave, almost like a gauze. Okay. Have one more and then we'll jump into the chiffons last. This I got from Joann's and it is shiny. It almost looks like a charmeuse is what I think it is. I did not look at it. A charmeuse is like a very, very lightweight satin. It's got a high sheen to it. Charmeuse is also thinner. So satin, you usually think of like costume satin or formal satin that's really thick and stiff, better for fitted formal dresses or full dresses. A charmeuse is shiny like a satin, but much thinner and much drapier. Usually used in like lingerie or like the binding on babies' blankets is often charmeuse. So, super, super drapey. Nice and lightweight. I got that one from Joann's, if you're wondering. Alright. I grabbed a few chiffons because chiffon tends to be a drapey woven that's easier to find. But chiffon can be tricky to work with, and it's almost always sheer. If you're ordering a chiffon online, I would expect it to be sheer. There are a few chiffons that aren't. This is a poly chiffon, and it's a darker base color. So it is still semi-sheer, but since it's a darker color, it's pretty opaque. So this is a poly chiffon. Okay, so I do find it easier to work with too. So I'll drape it. It's a tiny piece because I've already used it to make a kimono. So it's only a little piece, but very drapey. I have 2 more chiffons. Sorry, my piles are getting in the way. Yes, I'm wearing a pumpkin spice dolman, so it's an itty. The poly chiffon, it's pretty old. I got that a couple summers ago. I just can't remember. Okay. My next chiffon is I picked up from Joann's. And I picked this one because it's a little stiffer. It's got a metallic print on it, which makes it a little bit stiffer. And as you can see, very sheer. But even though it, compared to most chiffons, it's a little bit stiffer, you'll see that it still has beautiful drape. It's just so lightweight, it's going to drape really well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fold lines, super, super drapey. Again, I got this one from Joann's. If you find yourself with a chiffon that's super slippery and hard to work with, we do have a blog post already about working with tricky fabrics like chiffon. And that's this one. I got this one from downtown Dallas. Super sheer, super lightweight, slinkier. So this one will be challenging to sew, but it was just so cute. I just couldn't resist it. So I'll drape this one too. This one is a silkier, and that just means it has something else in the content that's making it drapier. Either a silk or a rayon, just a little bit of it will make it that much drapier. So beautiful drape, worth taking a little bit longer to cut, to sew, because it'll be so soft. Okay, now if there's one that I left out that somebody was waiting for, chiffon is not hot. It's super, super lightweight, so very airy, not hot at all. Alright guys, one that I did leave out that I see all the time, actually there's 2 that I see all the time because some of the designers offer this, like Art Gallery, is a lawn and a viole, which again, I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly, so I'm sorry, V-I-O-L-E. These are both lighter weight cottons. Usually they're still 100% cotton, they're just lighter weight. So they tend to have a little bit of a softer hand, but not good drape. You still need like a semi-fitted garment to wear one of those. What kind of lining is appropriate for chiffon? So if you're doing something drapey with a chiffon, you'll want a drapey lining. So something like 100% poly, you can usually find in a lining, and usually it's just labeled lining, and it'll be inexpensive and it'll be great to line. So the top patterns that I use for chiffon are the Everyday Elegance. I have a chiffon one. I love the kimono, the summer kimono. You could do a timeless tunic in it, but the timeless tunic can also handle fabrics that are a little bit more stable, so I tend to do that for those. Is there any that I missed that anybody would like me to describe, even though I might not have a sample? I love chiffon. I tend to pick up chiffon a lot, even though I don't generally pick it to sew out of my stash a lot. But you can find beautiful chiffons. They're hard to pass up. Everyday Elegance is drafted for non-stretch woven fabric, so you can use any of these for, or any of the drapey ones. It's a really loose fit, so the Everyday Elegance really needs something with drape to look good. My shirt is an itty knit, so this is a stretch knit. This is not a woven. Interlock is a knit as well. Silk. So I didn't go over very many of the formal wovens. So formal you would think of as satin silk, well, lace, chiffon can be used in formal too, but those are all really made for more fitted garments usually. Satin has, silk. Silk is usually made with silk. Is the content, and it tends to be stiffer and begs for a more structured garment like a formal gown. I did describe linen and chambray, so when I post it you guys can see that. Okay, the one last thing I'm going to do at the end, unless anybody pops up with another one that I didn't describe, is show that cotton woven one more time compared to one of the super drapey ones. And this is not to say that, you know, you can't use cotton woven for anything, but I see a lot of ladies really unhappy with woven patterns because they're using something like a cotton woven chambray lawn that is not drapey fabric, that really needs a more structured garment, and they're just not happy with it, and then they tend to stray away from woven patterns. So I'm going to pop this on there again just to show the difference one more time. Again, it's a much more narrow piece of fabric and much less drape. As you can see, it sticks out. It's only got 1, 2 fold lines, and it's going to add quite a bit. Her body is a pretty long piece. So here's where she ends. Oh, you know, it's blocking it. Okay, here's where my mannequin ends, and as you can see, here is where my fabric ends. So it's adding all of this to her silhouette. This is why most people are not going to be happy using something like a cotton woven for apparel. Let alone 100% cotton is just going to wrinkle so badly. You're going to ride in the car, and when you get there, it's going to look like, you know, you were doing this to your shirt. Something like a rayon, a poly, a crepe, chiffon, they're not going to wrinkle like that. I mean, I can bundle this up and let it go, and it's not going to be wrinkly. You can see a little bit, but all of these are just bundled up, and you really want that in a woven garment, or else things like, you know, the back of your knees, your elbows, your armpits, things that you're constantly moving, they're going to get super wrinkled if you're wearing a fabric that wrinkles really easily. Okay. A lot of people do use a cotton woven, a quilting cotton for little girls' dresses, and it's a lot easier to sub that for an apparel fabric because they're not curvy. They don't have a figure to fit. You know, they're straight up and down. And if it adds a few inches to their silhouette on their hips, no one minds, right? The 5-year-old isn't going to be like, oh, this makes me look wider than I am, you know? So using a cotton woven or chambray or something that's more stiff, that isn't going to drape well, isn't necessarily terrible for a little kid. The only thing that you have to battle for a little one is ironing. So poly is a synthetic, but rayon is actually not a synthetic. It's made from natural things, usually like bamboo. Another word for it is viscose. So rayon should, I've never thought that they smell. I mean, I think all fabric smells when it comes from the warehouse or the store. But poly will hold heat just like a poly knit. But it's usually just not as hot in a woven because it's so lightweight. A rayon, just like a rayon knit, shouldn't hold in heat. It's very good for hot weather. Alright guys, if nobody else has one that they want to hear about, then I'm going to sign off for tonight. I hope it helped anybody understand about drape, about the different contexts that you can find. So I did do a crepe earlier. I can grab it, but here was my crepe. Broadcloth. Okay, broadcloth is 100% cotton, so very similar to a quilting cotton. Sometimes broadcloth is a cotton poly blend. It tends to be used for quilting, I think. But peach skin, I did miss that one. Peach skin is very similar to the ones at the end. It's got really good drape. It says it has a slight brushed side, but honestly when I get peach skin I hardly notice that it's brushed at all, but it's usually opaque, so not sheer, and it usually has drape. It would be good for a looser garment. Yes, so broadcloth has no stretch. It's close to like a batiste, and so it usually is like a little bit thinner, and that's why you can get it a little bit more inexpensive. They're usually one of the least expensive at the fabric store. A lot of people use them for lining and things because they're a little bit thinner and a little bit less expensive. Is a waffle weave. All right, ladies, I think we're winding down here. If I did miss one and you would like to see maybe a picture of it draped or just a short description, I am working on a woven apparel fabric cheat sheet. So I will post that when it's done. But if I missed one, I can try to comment with a little description and maybe what it's commonly used for. I hope it helps you guys who are just dipping your toes into woven apparel and maybe makes you a little less scared to try. Bye guys.